Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Almassian. On this channel, we also speak about the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh. And today, Azerbaijani forces, they have launched a military operation again against the Armenians of Artsakh, where 120,000 Armenians are stuck in that region. And for that, I'm hosting today Brad Pearce. He's a foreign policy analyst, writer on Substack under the page The Wayward Rubbler. Guys, the link of his Twitter and also his Substack are in the description below. He's also contributing to the Cradle and Libertarian Institute. Thank you very much, Brad, for accepting my invitation. It's a pleasure to have you on my channel. Let's discuss together what's happening in that troubled region today.
All right. Thank you for having me on.
It's a great pleasure. Your article, if I want to a little bit speak about it, you started your article with the title that says the final betrayal of Artsakh. It's an interesting, to be honest, title, because the Armenians, some in the diaspora, some in Armenia themselves, they say that Pashinyan has betrayed the people in Artsakh. In your opinion, or when you started writing this article, why did you choose this term, the betrayal? Who betrayed the Armenians of Artsakh? Is it in people inside Armenia or also in the region and on the international scene?
I mean, the most of all, it is a reference to Pashinyan himself. And the reason I chose that is because over the last 30 years, Nagorno-Karabakh, or the Artsakh Republic, has been very close to Armenia. They've relied on them for security and for a lot of other things, their kinsmen and everything else. And so it's been the general, policy to support them, to protect them. In another way, Artsakh, protects Armenia because it's like a border territory and it's the highlands overlooking them and things like that. But basically, Pashinyan has been trying to move the country towards the west for reasons that honestly are only clear to him. And it seems that he has decided that Artsakh is kind of a problem that he doesn't want to deal with anymore. And he believes that he can get security for Armenia proper by giving up Artsakh to the Aliyev regime in Azerbaijan. And I think that is a pretty bad miscalculation, as well as all the other problems with it.
Do you agree with my assessment that Karabakh, regardless of its legal status, represented a buffer zone between Armenia proper and Azerbaijan? And if the Armenians lose the region of Artsakh, then the battles will move inside Armenia proper?
I mean, I think that's entirely possible. And, there is a small amount of land in Armenia that is occupied by Azerbaijan and has been since 2020. But, if you look at the land that they controlled before the disastrous 2020 conflict, it was undeniably providing, a large buffer between them and Azerbaijan. Of course, they lost most of that territory, and now there's not really anything between their borders and Azerbaijan. But it very much seems that Aliyev and Erdogan as well, hate Armenia to a completely disproportionate amount for anything Armenia possibly could have done to them. So, I very much think that Armenia itself is going to be more threatened without the Artsakh Republic under ethnic Armenian control than it, ever was while they did have them there serving, as a sort of buffer.
Brad, I was planning to ask this, the last question to you. I was going to ask you, why do the Turkic people or in Turkey and Azerbaijan hate the Armenians? And since you mention it right now, what are the basis for this hate against the Armenians? The Armenians experienced an ethnic cleansing during the World War I. And now I personally see so many comments on social media platforms from Turkish people and Azeri people, and they say, we are now going to finish the job that we started like 100 years ago.
Well, a lot of people don't like to hear this, but the truth is that the Turks of Turkey are closer related to the Greeks and the Armenians than they actually are to the Turks of Central Asia, because, there was the process of Turkification where they were like an elite class that kind of culturally changed the society. But so, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous because they're actually at this point very closely related people. But, you know, what I came up with in the article was the Tacitus quote about how it's human nature to hate a man that you've injured. You know, no one wants to see a person they've committed a crime against. And I think it's that more than anything. And, you know, you look at it like Azerbaijan has this whole like history that they seemingly have invented of them facing genocide at the hands of the Armenians. That is just something that came up in the post-Cold War era. But I don't know, it's kind of incomprehensible, even in terms of ethnic conflict, because like, I mean, just Armenia is such a small country and such a disadvantaged position, but they I don't know, they just really do hate them.
Yeah, actually, when the First World War was over, it was Stalin who gave these territories to Azerbaijan. Just like also the Soviets gave up the Crimea to the Ukrainians. They had their own geopolitical calculations back then, but this region was Armenian for a very long time, for thousands of years. And Stalin back then, when they created the socialist countries in the Caucasus that included Azerbaijan and Armenia, this region was supposed to be for Armenia, but then the last moment Stalin changed it. So it is very controversial to speak about the legality of this place when Armenia and Azerbaijan, both of them were under the rule of the Soviet Union, and it was the Soviet Union which was picking which territory belongs to who. The people weren't asked about it. Although 98% of the people who lived in Karabakh, they were Armenians, even during after the First World War. And since the Soviet Union chose that this will be an Azeri land, and after the Second World War, Azerbaijan they registered like the territory on their name, but the Armenians found the opportunity with the fall of the Soviet Union in the 90s to liberate the territories from the Azeris. I think this context is very important to before we speak about the legality of this case. But if we want to go back a little bit to your article, you mentioned here, pro-Western Prime Minister has continued to insult and alienate Russia, the country which has been the guarantor of Armenia's security throughout the post-Cold War era. In pulling close to the Americans and NATO, Pashinyan is also isolating his country from Iran, the only other friend in the region who might be willing to go to war to protect Armenia, both for geopolitical reasons and also because there are strong historic ties between the Armenian and Persian people. What really strikes me here is that Israel is openly supporting Azerbaijan, right? And Israel considers Azerbaijan as an advanced satellite state to spy on Iran, and also, if necessary in the future, to strike, to hit Iran. They could use also the Azerbaijani territories to refuel their fighter jets. In this situation, if I'm just a bargainer, you know, I'm a politician who wants to bargain and secure my interests in the region, I should find myself on the side of Iran, which has an interest in Azerbaijan not becoming a strong regional country supported by Israel. But instead, Armenia is heading towards the west, and they're just complaining about Israel. They're not doing anything about it. So do you think here Pashinyan's policy represents as someone shooting himself in the feet in this regard by not coming closer to Iran and Russia, but alienating them from the region?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a drastic miscalculation, and it's difficult for me to like understand what line of thinking would lead to that. But you know, Armenia has always kind of been in between the like Oriental and like Occidental worlds or what have you, because you know it's like in between Rome and Persia and everything else like that. So I mean, I'm sure that's like a very real strain like within their society of, you know, who they want to be more like, though it kind of amazes me that you would look at Western culture and society and, you know, want to bring your country closer to that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a very bad miscalculation because, you know, it's like the U.S. can't even access Armenia to defend them if they wanted to. Like Turkey's not going to let them move troops through to defend Armenia. They can't move them into the Black Sea. They don't even have a way to get there. Like it's completely, you know, idiotic to think that the US or EU can protect them, because even if they had the desire, it's basically impossible for them to do so. Whereas, Iran is right there. It has its own reasons to counter Azerbaijan because it's being used by Israel as, as a hedge against them. And for some reason, he's just making all of the wrong decisions. I guess I don't know what's in his heart. I think he's a combination of foolish and, in many ways misguided. Yeah, exactly. Like, I just don't know.
I truly believe after 2020 that Pashinyan is a fifth column. I do not believe that all these wrongdoings are just miscalculations. I do not believe so, because even the foolish politicians, when they see their policies are counterproductive, at least they pretend that they're trying to fix it. Pashinyan is not even trying to pretend that he is he's not even pretending that he's trying to fix the miscalculations. And everything that happened after the 2020 conflict is that Armenians are losing more territories, and even they are giving up territories that the Armenians didn't lose during the 2020 conflict, and giving the Azeri side important hills that overlooks the Armenia proper, which will give Azerbaijan a strategic advantage if Azerbaijan attempts to attack Armenia proper after cleansing the Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh. So I wouldn't say this is just a miscalculation. I would argue that this is also a collaboration from the Pashinyan regime with his own enemies. And this was also argued by many experts coming from Armenia.
Well, in politics generally, in international relations, one of the most difficult things to get a good read on is kind of the evil/incompetent matrix, because most politicians and political leaders are some combination of malicious and incompetent. So it's always hard to know what's going on in that regard. But at the very least, regarding his feelings towards the people of Artsakh, it very much seems like he is done with this, and it's his policy to sell them out, and it is not just a matter of lack of wisdom.
Yeah, but don't you think that after the Ukraine war, because you also argued this in your article, that Armenia could be turned into a pawn, in this conflict? Don't you think at least the leadership in Armenia should look what's happening in Ukraine, that the Americans, the NATO side, let's say, is using Ukraine as a cannon fodder, and they have sent tens of thousands of Ukrainians to their death during this counteroffensive, right? And Ukraine supports, Azerbaijan supports the blockade on the Armenians. They are they have provided Azerbaijan with depleted uranium in the past, and they are 100% on the side of Azerbaijan. And then Pashinyan sends his wife to Kiev for photo shooting, for photo shooting with the wife of Zelensky. And it's like, I cannot understand. I cannot say all these are miscalculations. Come on.
No, I mean, you're right. I guess the matter is then like who is he compromised by, or like what is he actually trying to do? Because it's crazy. I mean, I don't know. I guess, do you know where Pashinyan was educated? He went to college.
He's educated in Armenia, and
okay,
he's one of the But he was a journalist, He wasn't in political field. Yeah, he was a very bad journalist for everyone to know. And we say in Arabic, he used to work in a yellow newspaper, which means spreading rumors and trying to create hype and clickbaits and all this stuff. That
phrase comes from America, actually.
Yeah. He belongs to that school, right? And he was successful because the NGOs in Armenia, they spawned like never before in the past years, and all of them, they gave him this. The media is capable of creating an image about a politician, like. See Joe Biden, man. The guy cannot formulate two sentences, and despite that, they show him with the best form possible, and they show him as a strong leader. They have done the same thing with Pashinyan in 2018, and the Armenians fell for that trap. And it's mind-boggling that in 2018, lots of people were enthusiastic, including my friends, some of my relatives. But in 2023 now, he is losing so much popularity in Armenia. And during the elections, whether it's municipal elections or parliamentary elections, Pashinyan is doing what any dictator does during elections. He has full control over the governmental institutions. He sends all the employees to voting. He sends buses to the schools, to the secondary schools, to the universities, and bring all the, let's say, pupils to vote for him. And this is happening in front of our eyes. And despite that, he is not gaining a majority. People need to understand that in the past elections, parliamentary elections that happened after 2020 defeat, Pashinyan, the turnover was around 50%, so half the people didn't vote. And of this 50%, he got 50% of the votes. So he's ruling with around 30% of the Armenian population in Armenia, and it's mind-boggling. In your article, you speak about the Lachin corridor, and I will just check the article that you wrote here. And it says, for example, the Lachin corridor is the only passage remaining between the region and Armenia, which is supposed to be kept open by Russian peacekeepers as part of the ceasefire agreement that ended the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war. Now, this route is blocked by Azerbaijan since December 2022. And Azerbaijan insists on opening the Agdam road instead of the Lachin road. Why do you think the Azeri side is insisting on this route?
Okay, so I just need to say quickly to your previous point, in the Yerevan municipal elections on Sunday, his party got 33% of the vote with 30% turnout. So that's 10% of Yerevan voters supporting him. So that's really very low. Anyway, regarding these corridors, I found a map when I was researching for this that I then couldn't find again that showed, the actual route you'd have to take to get from Armenia to the Agdam Road. And it's, a huge winding mountain road that circles all the way around the territory of Artsakh. The biggest issue here is that they've blockaded the Azerbaijan side for 30 years to, keep them out. And so everyone rightfully fears that if they let them in at all, it's the beginning of a process of integrating the region into Azerbaijan. And, they did clear some of the roadblocks because they were that desperate for aid. And of course, once the road and tanks and whatever other vehicles you want without obstruction. So, it's a big problem. But something really interesting that I saw after I read this was talking about how the United States finds it completely unacceptable in Syria if the so-called rebel-held areas only receive humanitarian aid from Damascus, from the Damascus side. And so they insist that it is able to come in from Turkey and elsewhere. So it's a very comparable situation to that, in terms of what the policy about aid deliveries would be. But, they've opened up the Azerbaijan side, and they're still blocking the, route from Armenia, which is, a very short little stretch that goes right there because they claim they fear weapons smuggling, which, I would assume that is where, Artsakh gets its weapons from, but still.
But the Azeri side, and this is also mentioned in your article, Azerbaijan's leader Aliyev, he claims that the Armenian population in Nagorno-Karabakh has nothing to fear about integration into Azerbaijan. He won't give them any special status, and he says, quote, "They will live like all citizens of Azerbaijan. Their rights will be protected the way the rights of Azerbaijani citizens and peoples living in Azerbaijan are protected." He further says, quote, "The rights and security of the entire population of Azerbaijan are guaranteed by the country's constitution. Azerbaijan is a multinational country and Armenians are not the largest ethnic minority." Now, given that all this hatred that started, let's say, after World War I, and then more hatred after the fall of the Soviet Union because of the clashes and the history between these two countries, is it, let's say, reasonable that the Armenians would be peacefully integrated into the Azerbaijani society, or do you think they will be pushed away into Armenian proper or probably assimilated in the Azerbaijani society?
Have you ever looked at Azerbaijan's constitution?
No, tell me.
Oh, seriously, you should read it. It's like a cruel joke if you know anything about Azerbaijan. Like, if their constitution was followed, I'm not joking, it would be one of the freest countries on earth. Like, they protect every right imaginable, full democracy, fair elections, absolute freedom of media. Like, everything else like that is guaranteed under Azerbaijan's constitution. So, like, most of all, I would not take anything that is in that constitution to have absolutely any meaning within that country. And then, of course, yeah, there's no reason to believe that the rights of these people are going to be protected. You know, as I pointed out, none of these people have paid property taxes to Azerbaijan in 30 years. So, like, they could just seize their land that way and say, no, we're not ethnic cleansing them. They're getting their property seized for non-payment of taxes. Like, there's a million ways they could do it and put on some surface to, you know, claim they're actually doing something else.
It sounds like during the caliphate times, right? Like, if you don't pay your taxes, then your land will be taken from you. And if you're a Christian, you don't have to go to fight, but you have to pay more taxes for that. It sounds like similar to me, although at the moment, no other country is pursuing this path, right? And to be honest with you, the territories that the Armenians lost in Karabakh during the 2020 war, they were all evacuated, and the people were evacuated either to Stepanakert or to Armenia proper. So the Armenians who used to live on their land, they didn't stay there. They couldn't integrate into the Azeri society. My opinion is Armenians have two options now. They either get displaced completely to Armenia proper, or those who decide to stay in Karabakh, they will be assimilated into the Azeri society, and in a generation or two or three, just like what happened in Eastern Anatolia, where it was predominantly Armenian, it was inhabited predominantly by Armenians, and now go there and see all the names of the streets are changed, the churches are destroyed, the monuments of the Armenians are destroyed. So they will be ethnically cleansed in either way if they lose Artsakh. This is my perception of this conflict.
Yeah, I mean, and the third option that is not necessarily wise, but many people have chosen historically, would be to send the women and children and elderly to Armenia properly, and then the men will fight to the death for their land, which, I mean, a lot of people have done that historically.
My friend, to fight against Azerbaijan, you need the backing of the Armenian government. Yeah. And today Pashinyan said they're not willing to fight for Karabakh. Yeah. If your government doesn't fight for you, the people cannot carry stones and fight. Yeah. And we have, and this is something I want to again mention. Lots of Armenians who say, "Oh, look, we're weak, and we cannot fight against Azerbaijan, which has a superior army and everything." I understand that. But there's so many examples in history, and we're not talking about 100 years ago. We're talking about in the past 10 to 20 years of small guerrilla armies who defeated strong armies. And we're talking about, for example, in Lebanon, what happened in 2006, and so many other places. So first, you need determination. Second, you need military tactics. So you need tunnels, you need guerrilla warfare techniques, you need drones, you need to inflict pain to the enemy. For example, in 2020 conflict, when people were asking Pashinyan, why isn't he striking strategic facilities in Azerbaijan? The only time he used one of his long-range missiles, he hit the civilian infrastructure. It's crazy. And the people were asking, why don't you hit military, for example, bases? Or why don't you hit some gas fields or oil fields of Azerbaijan? Because those are strategic sites. And it deters Azerbaijan from continuing his operation inside Nagorno-Karabakh territories. You know what he said? He said, we use the Scud missiles of Russia, and these missiles have exploded only 10% of its capacity. So imagine a prime minister, the leader of a country, who says the Scud missiles that he fired them, but they didn't explode, or they exploded 10% of their capacity. And there is nothing of that sort. There is no missile that can explode 10% of its explosive capacity. It either explodes or doesn't explode. So I'm always mentioning this example because sometimes I say like I'm gonna pull my hair and I'm gonna go bald, and all these mistakes costed the Armenians 5,000 martyrs and victims during this war, and so many thousands of them are amputated and they're injured, and now 120,000 could be ethnically cleansed. So to fight against Azerbaijan, first you need a leader. You need a nationalist leader, and I don't care what people say about me, because in Armenia, some people say if you're a nationalist, then you're a fascist. I don't care. The Armenian national identity must be preserved, and I believe in deterrence measures, and I believe that there should be someone who understands basic geomilitary factors. I cannot believe that the country like Armenia is governed by a journalist who doesn't even understand what geopolitics means, or he can move the military brigades correctly, right? And since he came to power, he sacked so many officers who had long experience against Azerbaijan, including officers who were part in the military hostilities in the 90s. He sacked all the officers and sent some of them to jail. Those who had close ties to Russia. He exposed the national security of Armenia to Azerbaijan. This is simply it.
Well, the other thing, I talked about that missile debacle in my previous article about this from last year. And the other really big thing about that is that was part of what really made relations with Russia worsen, because he basically blamed Russia's military gear for being bad for his own incompetence. And Russia did not take kindly to that because, they have like a really profitable arms industry and everything else. And they gave Armenia, systems that Armenia was literally the only country besides Russia itself, that had access to. And then his claim was just like, oh, they didn't work. So, I mean, that was a huge diplomatic problem as well as his military incompetence.
Yeah. And my impression is that he is blaming Russia for the inaction of the peacekeeping forces. He wants the peacekeeping forces to engage in hostilities with Azerbaijan. He wants to drag the Russians into war for his own people. Like, he wants to push the Russians against Azerbaijan. The Russians aren't fool, They're not going to open a second front in the Caucasus this time while they are busy with another conflict in Ukraine, which is existential threat for them.
Yeah, I mean it's true. I mean, at the same time, it is the case that Russia's not using their whole army in Ukraine, and could counter Azerbaijan pretty effectively with a relatively small part of it. But yeah, I mean, they're going to avoid all of this. I mean, especially because he's been so openly inappreciative and, and is not taking part in the security alliance that they're part of and everything else of that nature. So, I mean, he's just created a situation where there's no one that's going to help them. It's really an incredible thing.
Yeah. He didn't allow the CSTO defensive alliance to come and conduct military drills on his territory, but then he's allowing now the American forces. And from the pictures that I saw on social media, it seems that these American forces were training the Armenian forces on counter protest measures. It's like they were expecting some revolution or something against Pashinyan, and they're training them how to suppress this uprising.
Yeah, well, what else is crazy is in one of the videos from the U.S. Congress that's been going around. I don't remember who it was, but someone said, like, oh, a lot of our military aid to Armenia goes to helping them secure their border with Iran, which stops, drug trafficking, which is a major source of revenue for the IRGC. So they go, okay, so firstly, you're just acknowledging it does nothing for Armenia's actual security. Secondly, I am pretty sure the IRGC gets most of its funding from taxes because it is a military. I mean, I don't know. But like, it was crazy that they would just say that, because it's like, so you're saying that your military aid to Armenia goes to their border with a friendly nation to deal with like transnational crime issues and doesn't actually do anything to protect them from, the countries that threaten Armenia. Like, you guys are great friends.
Crazy, man. But thank you very much, really, for joining me on Syriana Analysis. It was a pleasure having you on my channel. And guys, please give him a follow on Twitter, and also his Substack is in the description below. Let's see how this conflict will develop in the coming days. Probably I also do another follow-up video on the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh. But up until then, please raise awareness about the suffering of the Armenian people there. Armenians cannot live in Azerbaijan and not being persecuted by the Azeri people. Armenians have the right for self-determination, just like any other people around the world. And they have voted to become an independent country in the 90s. And I think that's a right, that's a given right to the people, even under international law. But unfortunately, only the powerful can impose their will and under this international system. Therefore, the Armenians have to empower themselves, have to strengthen themselves. And the defeatism that Pashinyan has spreaded among the Armenians after 2018 has created a situation that there's so many Armenians are defeated in their soul and defeated in their minds, and they think that they cannot sustain any sort of conflict against Azerbaijan. Brad, thank you very much again for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Goodbye.
It's a great pleasure.